film. I shot it in North Carolina, and basically I was hired by, older, more experienced producers who sort of had set a very specific way to make a movie, but we didn't really have the budget to do it properly at that budget, so that it was like I remember we were doing a driving scene in that film, and they said you have to do it the sort of traditional way, which means you have what's called an insert car, and you tow the car, and you mount the cameras and the lights, but you can't drive that on the city road unless you have a police escort. And we couldn't afford the police escort, which means I had to do my driving scene in a parking lot. And it took about 10 seconds to get from one side of the parking lot to the other. So I had to break this 3-minute scene up into 10-second little chunks. And that's a really hard challenge to be faced with that and actually do a good job, especially on your first film.
You learned a lot on that film, huh?
Well, I sort of had this attitude that, like, if you don't have enough money to do the film sort of properly, you shouldn't even pretend to be trying to do it that way. And so afterwards, and actually the very last thing I did is I shot the title sequence for that film in my parents' basement right here on the Upper East Side. And it was a title sequence with a cat chasing a rat. And it came out great, but I violated like all the rules I'd ever been taught in film school. And unfortunately I did it at the end of shooting Getting In. And it came out great, but it was too late to sort of apply that and use that as sort of ammunition. And I had always been taught by my parents to sort of, respect your elders and listen to what other people have to say and just don't assume you're right. And so these were people who had more experience, who were very specific about how you should shoot a movie. And even though I didn't agree, I thought I should listen to them.
And they paid for this. They were the bad.
Yeah, and then I went and did this title sequence, and I said, I like this title sequence more. I think my producers are wrong. It was too late for Getting In, but then I was friends with Jon Favreau, and we started working on Swingers, and I said to him, I actually have an idea of how you could do an independent film where you could actually take the fact that you don't have enough money and turn that into your advantage. And I showed him the title sequence from Getting In, which was just, this cat and this rat. And said, I tried this on animals and it worked, and I'm ready to try it on humans, and I think it should be you and Vince. And they said yes. And so, for instance, on that film, I had a driving scene driving to Vegas. I looked at the sort of, we got this, and actually Avram Ludwig, who was my partner on the film, was out here in the audience. I'm going to raise your hand. And we got this special rig that specifically said, that was from U-Haul for towing cars, and it specifically said in huge letters on it, do not put people in the car you're towing. It's meant for if you're moving, you tow your car
behind.
They
didn't know who they were dealing with.
So we hooked the car up to this rig and towed it behind a pickup truck, and I literally picked the highway in LA that I thought was least likely to have police. And that's basically what the shooting order.
What highway is that?
The 118.
You went to the 118?
Because I didn't know anyone who'd I'd never been on the 118 in my entire life. So I
but they just opened the 118 or something, right? Like right.
I don't know. I just didn't know anyone who'd ever been on that highway, so I figured there's probably not going to be as many police, and there weren't. We didn't get arrested, and there was the whole shooting schedule of Swingers was actually organized. Normally you think about the actors and their performances. You try to shoot the film in sort of story order, or you try to shoot all the daytime work first. For us, we organized it by the things most likely to get us arrested were put at the end. And this was the very last thing we shot, because this was the thing I thought for sure was going to land us in jail.
The tow shot.
The tow shot.
On the 118.
Yeah.
So Getting In was what length? What was the running time of the film?
Like 100 minutes.
So you took the... these people had financed the film. What happened in the film?
It came out on video, and it did well for them on video.
For them on video, and you of course took the rat cat sequence to sell your next movie.
Yeah.
To Favreau, and you go do Swingers, and what happens?
Swingers.
We know what happens, but tell us in your words what happens.
Swingers is, it's a different world now for independent film, but back then independent films were made for, a minimum of $1 million, which is what Getting In was made for, and I made Swingers for $200,000, which actually isn't even enough money to buy film stock to make a film. I mean, you're begging and borrowing every last little thing to pull a film off for that budget number back then. Because just physically shooting film, just 2 hours worth of film, you obviously have to shoot a lot more than 2 hours worth of film.
$200,000 is like the budget for ICE on most independent films.
It was our ammunition budget on Born Identity.
Yeah, you go. With your Tic Tac budget.
Yeah. And so we finished the film, and we did not get into the Sundance Film Festival. And I basically scheduled... Swingers did not get into Sundance. We were all completely heartbroken. And, but we sort of picked ourselves up, and we said, all right, we'll just organize our own screening. And we organized it 2 weeks after Sundance. And it turns out that was the Sundance that where Harvey Weinstein got into a fist fight with somebody from New Line over a film, and sort of, Harvey had left Sundance sort of wanting. He left Sundance like wanting to win and get another movie, and we happened to be showing our movie right into that environment. So he aggressively pursued us, and it was, at the time, it was the most profitable sale of an independent movie.
So Harvey bought Swingers after Sundance.
Like 2 weeks screening at the Fairfax $2 theater. Beverly and Fairfax. And we, I tried to be a good business person about it, and I thought, I don't want to seem eager to sell the movie.
The New Beverly? The Art House Theater?
I don't know what it's called now, but it's right around the corner from Cantor's. It is? Oh, sad. So with the last little bit of money that we had, I rented a bus to come wait outside the theater when the film ended, because I didn't want us to be loitering around seeming desperate to sell the movie. And so when the film ended, I sort of thanked everybody for coming and said that the cast and the crew were now going to get on the bus and go to Vegas. And give the buyers a sense that, like, we're actually going to live the Swingers movie. We're going to go have a huge adventure. And we all got on the bus, and Vince Vaughn had this stuff with him called Goldschlager. And we all started drinking, and we never made it to Vegas. There were people throwing up. I mean, it was not a good night.